Yeah, people are
Good
sleeping.
morning, everyone. Afternoon, everyone, depending on what part of the country you're in. I happen to be in morning still. So most of you are in the afternoon. I'm Rick Sterling with Western IM, and uh, I'm I'm feeling real good about this presentation today. I just want to say for IM Canada Connect, we've had a great opportunity to have some of the best presentations on this on the IM Canada Connect series for all of our practitioners across the country. It's very important that we all get our education, particularly with Canadian content, along the way. Uh, for all of you that support us, I appreciate it very much, as do everyone, does everyone else. And we will continue to do the best program possible. Again, thanks to my colleague, Donna Malloy, who is helping me with the I Am Canada Connect program right now, which is why you see Donna on the screen. You also see our three wonderful presenters today from Ottawa. And I will let Trevor kind of introduce himself and his colleagues to you shortly. We should say, though, that Trevor, because of his background, you know that Trevor is a Blue Jays fan. And our question of the day for all of you is, how many Blue Jays hats does Trevor own? So everybody can chime in now in their chat window to let us know how many you think Trevor might own in Blue Jays hats. I know I said to Trevor earlier, I'm really a football guy, but I'm watching Blue Jays games from Vancouver Island now as well. So it's a Canadian thing, right? Uh-oh, lots of options there, Trevor.
Indeed, indeed. We'll give it a few more seconds to let the room come in. It's a game of Price is Right, so folks, if someone guessed 12, you can go ahead and guess 13. I bet them by a dollar. So yeah.
I should say that I have known Trevor for quite a number of years. I haven't known Margaret and Marie Claude as long, but I have known Trevor for quite a long time, and I'm absolutely pleased and privileged to be able to have this presentation on today. Uh, I was in Montreal, fortunate enough to be in Montreal for the Canadian conference there, and watch the presentation live at that time at the ARMA Canada conference in Montreal. And at that point, Donna and I both really, Donna was there as well. We both decided it had to be seen by everybody. We are really looking forward to it. I should say too, for all the ARMA members across the country and the chapters across the country, please, if you have good presentations that you think would be a real advantage for our community across the country to see, please send me an email, send Donna an email. Let us know. We're always looking for great presentations we can offer to everyone in the country as we go forward in the I Am Canada Connect series. So already working on the great presentation for October, and we'll keep on going from there. So I'm going to really let Trevor take over at this point. Oh, Troy, I'm sorry, Troy, I apologize. My partner, Troy, who always keeps me on the right path here. Troy is the Director of Development at Western IM, and he's the one that all of you know so well for looking after all these presentations over the last 4 or 5 years.
Think so. Yep.
Thanks, Troy, for that.
Go to the presentation.
Yep. And I'm just going to shut up now and let Trevor do his thing and colleagues do their thing. It's really going to, I'm looking forward to it. And as in everybody else, we have probably the highest attendance, Trevor, in terms of sign up for this webinar that we've had in quite some time in I Am Canada Connect. So
Nice, nice. Well, I'm sure I'm seeing many of you again, and so it's great to be here. It is great to be invited. It is great to be part of a community, and that is the number one thing I love about Arma and why I spent so many years volunteering, because it is about the exchange of ideas. It is about growth. It is about success and failure. It is about novelty. And so that's kind of the spirit of the story we're going to share with you today. It's this program, when I say program, I mean this profession. I play a game at the Canada School all the time. And in fact, I won't do it necessarily right now, but there is a book that I read from and actually it's this one. And so what the heck, we are here for a short but a good time. I'll just start. I'll do is read something quickly to you all. And the words go something like this. Records management is a multi-million-dollar administration at a cost steadily mounting. Annually, at least 250,000 cubic feet of records are created in Canada, utilizing the equivalent of 30,000 filing cabinets and almost 180,000 square feet of space. Furthermore, the present cost of maintaining a standard 4-drawer filing cabinet of records in good office space is approximately $275 per year. These are facts. It is true that regardless of cost, records must be kept, but it is far from true that all records must be kept, or that they must be kept in prime office space, or that they must be kept indefinitely. Now, I read that fast because you all know what I'm talking about. But the more important thing is, given what I just said, I then, with the students at the Canada School of Public Service Learning, I go, when was that written? When did I read that? So if you went to the chat right now and typed in a year, what would it be? What year would you type in that I read this from? And to cut to the chase, it is not available because the screen is not showing it. So I will just tell you, hopefully it doesn't, no, the book's gonna hide it. 1965. 1965 was this. This is a bequeathed records management manual that a retiring fellow civil servant in Health Canada sent my way. And I thought, you know, it works. Our profession works. We've been doing this for a while, and 65 is not even the official first date. Obviously, we go back to Dowdy in the archives and things like this. Point I'm raising, right, is that the essence of the game is the same. The culture changes, some of the tools change. So really our purpose, we have a purpose, right? And we're constantly trying to find ways to express this and fold this in. And recently in the Government of Canada, we had a kind of quite interesting turn of events. So when I say recent, like anything in the Government of Canada within 7 years is like instantaneous change. And so there was an event happening, which is, I'll just say, the rise of data. I don't know if you think in Frankenstein or what it is, but you essentially have seen the digital narrative emerge. You've seen the rise of new positions like a chief data officer. You've seen these events. And I am kind of, we all looked at each other and went, what does this mean to us? And thankfully, one of my fellow co-presenters, and really the epiphany maker herself, Mary-Claude Cote, may or may not have bumped her head, but definitely had an epiphany and grabbed a napkin and wrote it down. And we have been chasing this dream ever since. And we're getting there. We are getting there. So I'm happy, and we three are happy to share this story. We were happy to show up in Montreal. Montreal's a great place. Who knows where we're going to meet next, but we're meeting online today. So here we go. Here we go. Today, we are going to move slides. That's what we're going to do. We're going to move slides. All right. So today, we're kind of presenting this idea to you for food for thought, for consideration, to show you what we are up to. When I say we, I mean the Government of Canada. So we are coming to you today in this contextualized way. Regardless of that, though, and as we've shared all along through a vehicle like, let's say, Arma Canada, we are in the same profession, right? We are in the same profession. So the idea ultimately is still pursuing the same goal that we established in 65, which is, we'll imagine a world where, and maybe in 1965, it was kind of like framed as a cost. Maybe imagine where we control our finances, but it's always been about access. It's always been about the access, the effective access, right? The elusive trusted source. So this is also part of our inspiration. It's no different, but of course, now there's just this continued dissection of what we call records as something goes from Word document to Excel. And when I mean Excel, you guys know Excel. It's all merged it's merged cells. That's just another version of Word. That's not data, but increasingly it is data. And so we're trying to actually still pursue the goal of access, use. And really, again, with data, we have seen the narrative change from not just I'll look after it if you don't need it anymore, but I can make sense of it, right? We can make sense of it. And that is a different element to our story, because information management never came and corrected the spelling on a document. It just contextualized it. Data has a different narrative, but it has the same principle of organization at its core. So we looked at this whole idea in this merged community, and we looked at it from a difference of things are changing in our community, and we want to tackle that macro problem in a new way, right? So I'm gonna dissect what I just said there, but first, let me introduce who's with me today. Now, Mary-Claude Cote and Margaret and I, the fun fact, this is the whole thing. I'm not reading bios. I don't do that, okay? What you really need to know is when we stand on each other's shoulders, we are the height of a male giraffe. I think that's more important. I think that's more important. Three of us come together that way. We are the height of a male giraffe. So, however, if you really wanted to get into further numbers, you would then immediately realize just how old are they? Because they all look like they're 29. They all look like they're 20. Like, what's going on there? 90 years of combined experience in this profession. Now, if you're familiar with the government of Canada, you realize it's not that you stay with one company. The government of Canada is our company, if you will, but we've moved around different departments. So we have acronyms. A lot of our acronym bingo is to, oh, what department were you at and when were you there? So we have years of experience. Okay, so been there, done that. So part of that fuels us to say, well, what's different this time? What's unique this time? What's different this time? So yes, the height of the male giraffe. Now you know. Okay, let me get into the details of the situation. So the rest of this presentation is going to be a trifecta of the three of us. I'm going to open it up. I'm going to pass it to Margaret, and then Mary Claude's going to bring us home. I'm going to attempt in the next bit to set the stage so that you realize when you're looking at the tool what it's trying to accomplish. Margaret's going to walk us through that. And then the details, the scenarios, let's bring it to life. We're going to do our best that we can with MC through PowerPoint. All right. I spoke earlier about these changes, what's happening, what's coming to the situation in the government and across Canada, if you will. I'll frame it as the rise of the CDO. Okay, the first one showed up in the government of Canada in 2016. They were in the private sector long before us. But the point is that the lens on data literacy, the lens on terminology started to be enunciated, right? And what was more fascinating was that this position immediately sought value by saying, I can solve your problem. Now, who doesn't want that? Who isn't going to give money for that? So, of course, they got some money, and of course, they rose in power. And interestingly, from a hierarchical perspective, IM kind of emerged out of records management where you had managers. And then eventually, when programs got large enough, you had directors. There had never been a director general. So hierarchically in the government of Canada, that is 2 levels above where we were stationed. And yet this is where a chief sits, okay? This is the idea of a chief C-suite idea. And they began to emerge and start to actually establish, here comes another word, the rules or policy on this. And yet they were doing it in a separate way. What I'm really saying was 2 cultures emerged, and yet the game was the same. The game was the same. So what we could immediately detect though, right, especially if you read the DM book, Data Management Book of Knowledge, is you see gaps. What you're really seeing in the data story is a focus on one part, but not on another. And this is really where you essentially look at the merger of these 2 communities. And so really through the rise of this was the likelihood or ability for us to reestablish our narrative. Okay, long story short, if you look at the acronym IMIT, you'll see that the IM thing was woefully ignored. I will stand behind that statement. I will defend that statement. I will explain that statement further. Okay, reporting to a CIO, I will go this far. Reporting to a CIO has been an abject failure. This has only forced us into a corner, and we are tired of reporting to a CDO. We need to report to someone who wants to make sense and use of content, knowing that to do that is to get it ready for use, fit for use. So a big thing started to happen in 2024 when we created officially the new data officer position in the government of Canada. Now, if you have attended past ARMA meetings, the one in Calgary and stuff, I have been on this horse for a while. Well, guess what? The horse rode into town. It's taking a drink. I'm in the bar. It's a thing. This position's established. This organizational change is happening, and we are moving away from a CIO model. And IM now works for CEOs. We are in part of the content container group. But at the root of it is the need to bring our methods together. That's the point of the story. You cannot have 2 separate groups doing the same thing beside each other. They must merge. And where should they merge? At the very cornerstone and heart of our business. And if you know in IM, the cornerstone for us is the life cycle. That's our methodological approach. Well, go figure, it is for data, but they're a bit of a mess. Those guys are a bit of a mess. If you go after where's and what data lifecycle they have, the answer is yes. Okay, so on the screen are just a collection of but a sample. And some of them cover certain territories, because what you really start to see with them is they're more micro. They want to solve a certain problem with a certain data set at this time. We are macro. We need to govern, we need to manage 100% of the company's information assets. Right. So we see this all the time when we create function activity nomenclatures for a file plan, and then we go, oh, the end user can fill it in. we don't worry about the details. We don't get into the ground levels. Well, actually, the data folks do. Again, this is an opportunity to merge the communities, right? So what we immediately detected when we did our first research on this idea of bringing together the method to form a new life cycle, a united life cycle, was that we had that nomenclature problem. And we've shared this at countless events with you guys. We've shared the fact that when a lawyer speaks or an IT person speaks and they use the word record, what did they mean? The IT guy meant a line item in a database, right? So we had a nomenclature problem that we really, really had to sort of reconcile, right? And that terminology was going to be again in the crux. But we had a community of, I'll call them initially data folks, data management folks, who were absolutely willing to work with us. And under the banner of a community of practice on data information, which is run out of Treasury Board Secretariat, the sort of home administrative in the government, we came together and we started to tackle this problem as a united front at the same time that the official positions were put in place. So the official positions put in place to redesign our culture, new methods on how to address the united approach to this content. Okay. So that this is the response we're going to start to work up and are really happy to show you today. All right. So there it is. There's the epiphany. There's the epiphany. By the way, when the Marie-Claude Côté font goes into the Library and Archives of Canada, this is going in there with it. This is a life cycle. Now you're thinking, wait, it's squibbles on a page. Of course it is. It's brilliance. It's what it is. It's node thinking. You don't approach a life cycle from a life cycle perspective. And this is the difference between micro and macro. Micro is, what do you do every day? You turn on your machine, or your machine's already on, you start to get ready, an email, you may save it. You jump around in all of the facets. You never actually do anything linearly. That's just not a thing. Macroly you do. We know macroly the life cycle has always defined the working components of our program. Sure, great, that's fine. And we kept that logic in place. But we wanted our tool to just be that, not a methodological approach in and of itself. Trying to explain the life cycle to anyone but yourself and IAMR is useless. We need a tool. We need this to show up literally, practically, pragmatically. And so ultimately what this allows us, the node idea. So what you're looking at is a node idea. Nodes are independent owned objects. Think of it like a functional classification model. Each function is independent unto itself, but connected together. So the story really does have a start and it does have an end, but the journey is different because what is the item in question? And so the freedom that Marie-Claude gave us was to think node-ish. And that was just liberating. It was a new approach, right? Nodes aren't new. I mean, we're obviously not laying credit to that, but I'm saying we went and sought new ideas and brought them to our profession. So our world has changed. The data folks are more pragmatic. They want pragmatism, right? They want to solve a problem. They want to design a system so that it has the features. So we have this tension that we're building, but we recognized and we thought this tool can do both. It can be the micro and it can be the macro. And so we set out to do this. And so we struck up a band and we started to test and define and refine. So Margaret, at this point, am I this slide or are you the next slide?
I'm doing this slide.
Okay, so without further ado, welcome to the floor, Margaret. So Margaret, I don't know if you need to hit a button that takes me off the screen. I can go content only.
Maybe you should, oh, I don't know.
See, there's the thing over there that says
Yes.
layout, but I'm sharing my screen. So you know what? You're not gonna be able to show yourself. So you know what?
Exactly.
You talk and I'll hit the button.
Okay, wonderful. Yes, so as Trevor said, we were being in the government of Canada, we have the luxury of having people from many different areas bring their expertise together. So we had a community of practice and representing 79 different departments that joined together with us to try and define a new way of looking at the life cycle. We, as he said, we went through a number of existing models, ARMA, DMBOK, UNEC's Generic Statistical Business Process Model, NIST, New South Wales Government, Digital Curation Center, and so on. And we looked at all the definitions and life cycles. And honestly, our first thought was, Is there something we can just take? But really, honestly, we couldn't find anything that fitted all the needs that we had. And so there was a lot of back and forth within our working group to really understand the terminology and pick terms and definitions that worked for both the information management and the data communities, so that we could, start the conversation together better. We tested the design by walking through examples from different organizations and domains. So we had some science areas, we had transportation areas, we had general government administration, all sorts of different ways of trying to figure out, does this new concept work? As a result of the testing, we refined it, tweaked the definition and life cycles, and currently we're focusing on developing some more communication products, making presentations like this one, also refining our visualization tool, which is really cool, and you'll see it later, and developing user guides and that kind of thing. Next slide, please, Trevor.
Yeah.
Now
Ta-da.
this is this is our visualization tool, which is on Shiny Apps, and it is really the best way, once you get used to it, to understand the model. As you can see, it's definitely not linear or even circular, and as Trevor said, we have the concept of nodes and connectors. Yeah, are you going to that? Excellent.
Yeah, I'm going to try. Yeah.
And so each of those circles is a node, and these represent distinct actions that are done on an information or data asset at a point in its life cycle. And the lines show the path from one node to another. The diagram is a bit complex right now because it shows all possible connections, but as Trevor just showed you, a particular journey doesn't go through all the points. It may only go through some of them. Sometimes it goes several times to one point, and there's a little bit of back and forth. So this model is this way of representing a data or information lifecycle is very flexible, and can really show graphically, visually, the connections between different stages of an information lifecycle. But before we go into detail on that, I do want to get back to sort of the presentation and just spend a little bit of time looking at the terminology and terminology that we're using. So we actually identified 17 distinct actions or actions performed on an information or data asset. And in developing these, we had to adhere to some basic principles. As you notice, all the nodes are actions, verbs. They're mutually exclusive, and this was one of the hardest points, that every action is unique. It can't be sort of overlapping between different nodes. And we found that in many of the life cycles, it was kind of like, well, what do you do in this stage in the life cycle? Oh, I don't know. It might be, this is maybe where you do that, or you might do it in the next stage. It really wasn't always clear. And we're also focusing on the journey of a single information or data asset, not the journey, not trying to describe an entire information management program or a business project or that kind of thing. So it's really specific for a data set or an information object. And it's important to note that these terms are not ones that I would put in front of a general audience. It's really terminology designed for information and data professionals such as IMers, information architects, data management people, etc. Okay, next slide, please. So recognizing that while that level of detail, the 17 nodes, is good for certain purposes, sometimes you need sort of a slightly bigger view. And this is where we decided to make 6 family groupings based on the relationships between the actions. So in initiation, you're starting out. These are the activities related to the development of the information or data. Acquisition is where you create or capture or collect it. Configuration, that's where you're storing, you're organizing, you're preparing and maintaining it. Processing, that's a lot of sort of the data related work to assess, refine, and manage. Leveraging, very important in the, as we go forward, discovering it, accessing, using it, sharing, protecting it. And disposition, of course, which is establishing the end state of the information or data. Next slide. So we've included all the, in this presentation, we've included all the nodes and their definitions so that you will have a takeaway. I assume this can be shared across to people.
$5. I mean, sorry, for free.
For free, yes. Yeah, and it also is captured in the presentation. Could you go back to the previous slide? Sorry. And I've lost my spot. Okay. I just wanted to focus on a couple of some of these nodes. We used specify needs. You'll see the first one there. We used that instead of the term plan because we wanted to distinguish between planning for a data or information asset as opposed to planning for an entire information governance program or data governance program, that kind of thing. Few of these other terms, acquire, store, they're fairly familiar to you. Contextualize, this is one of my personal favorites because it's where you capture the metadata about what it is, how it was collected, what's been done to it, what are the access conditions, retention, all sorts of stuff like that. That's very important. Contextualize, and throughout a life journey, a journey of information or data object, you'll be going back to that contextualized node to add metadata about what you've done to the object. So that's very important. Some of the other ones on this page, clean, engineer, analyze, they're more data oriented. Next slide, please. Again, some more curate and evaluate are more data oriented. Then you've got discover, access, use, share, protect. Those are very important as we're thinking of federated searching, data mining, and of course AI going across massive amounts of information and data. So these are key enabling actions that need to be explicitly considered during the life cycle of an information or data asset. And that's really one of the things we want people to get out of this life cycle is understanding what exactly happens to information or data at different points of its life cycle, what tools are needed to support this, what processes need to be put in place, what considerations such as metadata need to be added to it. So those are some of the reasons why we want to really pull out and understand what happens to an information or data asset. Next slide, please. Oh, and of course, we have actually tested it on paper records. So yes, it does work on paper records as well as a digital environment. Quickly, we wanted to also, because we did this at an ARMA conference, we wanted to make sure that we acknowledge that ARMA does have an information lifecycle, which is still valid. Our life cycle can map to that life cycle. However, we feel that our life cycle has that extra granularity to it and really allows both the data and traditional IM to be considered, as well as allowing multiple non-sequential paths. So I am going to pass this on to Marie-Claude to give you some examples of how it works in practice.
Merci, Margaret. Now that we have formed the band, compose a song, and hit the road with it, it's your turn to play the song. We'll look at 3 examples. Trevor, if you can come back to the slideshow, or maybe I should share it because it's going to be, you'll have to follow my lead to, I will share mine if I find where to share.
Next to the hand. So if you go to the screen, there's a chat, raise hand, and then share.
Chat. I see the chat. Raise hand, share. Okay, got it. Okay. You see my screen?
Now you have to make sure you hit, there's a double thing about Zoom versus Teams where you have to hit share. Pick the screen and then, yeah, there you go. Beautiful. Beautiful.
That's beautiful. Okay, good. Okay, so the first case study, 3 examples, okay, of how to use the model in a way that makes sense for any of your information data or asset. So the first case study is submitted by one of our band members, is existing HR data and information. As you can see, not all the 17 nodes are used. Do you see my mouse moving? No way.
Yes,
I
we
will
do.
use a laser.
Yes, you do.
Yes. Oh, okay, good. Okay. Not all the 17 nodes are used, only those that are needed for a particular path or journey. All our journeys start with either acquire or specify needs. Okay, it's not a specify needs or acquire. In this case, it's acquire in this example. So information is acquired from an applicant, for example, a resume or an application form, and then it is stored in a system. Contextualized, metadata is added. HR analyzes, where is analyzes? That's written, so hold on, I have a solution, much better. HR analyzes the information to determine if the applicant is if the candidate meets all the requirements. So more metadata added here to contextualize. So a hiring manager looks for a candidate in the system. That's in the discovery node. The system determines whether the person has the right to access it. And access has been granted. So the manager uses the information and add their own information in the contextualized node. For example, the results of an interview. The applicant file, is maintained in the system. Where is maintain again? Maintain, okay, access here, we use maintain. And if the candidate is hired, the information can be preserved in an employee file, for example, and eventually disposed of at the end of its retention period. In our model, each life cycle ends with disposition. In the government of Canada, that means either destruction, transfer to Library and Archives Canada, or alienation to a third party. So let's look at a second case study, which is the journey of a new open data set. The band member who submitted this scenario identified that the journey starts with specified needs, just here. From that node, there are two.
It's not showing the new slide.
It's not showing the new slide. Oh.
No, it's still on the, yeah.
You're sharing your screen that shows PowerPoint, not the screen that's presenting. You're sharing where we can see PowerPoint.
Oh,
Something
okay.
about,
Oh no.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, we're government trained teams people. We one trick monkey.
Yes.
We have to relearn Zoom.
Everybody's using Zoom.
How can I share the full?
So either when you go to share, pick your screen, right? Pick your screen, and then on that screen hit present for your slide. So
share
whatever.
and then hit present.
Yeah.
I believe you'll have to stop sharing first and then click share again.
Yeah, true.
Stop
True.
sharing. Okay. Then share again.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I want to share what?
This
Pick your
screen that
screen.
has full
Pick your
screen.
screen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You'll be able to see one with PowerPoint and one with the presenter screen here. Yep, perfect. Oh no, I
Okay.
think this might still
Well,
be, no, this is still
No,
your
well,
PowerPoint.
no, it
closer.
doesn't work.
Ready?
Okay.
Do you want
Yeah,
me to, do you want me
sorry,
to, do you want me to
Teams.
drive again? Do you want me to drive again, or are you okay? Because you can just yell at me to move the slide.
Okay, well, you can drive, so put on your glasses and find the names of the nodes that are written in like font minus minus 5 instead of Arial 12. So I will stop sharing. Okay, slide 15.
Perfect.
Okay, so the band member who submitted this journey determined that it starts with the node specified needs in blue. So from specified needs, you have two options: either acquire new data or discover existing data. Both lead to the contextualized node where we capture metadata either directly or through an intermediate node. And once context is added, there are again two options: either engineer the dataset or clean it. Let's clean the dataset. Let's choose the clean node. The journey continues to the analyze node, where the dataset is interpreted and prepared as a final output before being used. So that's the use node. So the final output is maintained and curated and then shared on an open data platform. So that's the lilac node at the right and bottom corner. So the share is an end of itself, but it's not the end of the data set. What we mean is that the final output is discovered by a user who downloads it. So we go back to discover, but this starts a new life cycle for this final output with the user who discovered it. As for the original data set, it is maintained and curated. It will be preserved until its retention period is over and finally disposed. This dataset journey yields a completely different constellation-like of graphic from the first scenario. Can you show, Trevor, the first scenario and then show again the second scenario? So you see that these are two different journeys, two different paths. I want to bring your attention on the non-sequential nature of the life cycle in the first and second scenarios. There are path options and there are loops, especially around the contextualized node, which will go back and forth to it. Next slide. Prochaine diapo. Well, there are cases when a sequential life cycle is required. And the third use case, we see that the journey for protected documents is pretty much linear. It starts with specified needs: acquire, access, protect, store, use, share, preserve, and eventually dispose. There is one loop between the nodes preserve, curate, and store. So it looks like a little house at the bottom of the constellation, the graphic. And so this loop can be repeated as often as needed during the life cycle of the asset. A linear life cycle, such as a traditional records management life cycle, or most of the data management life cycles out there, can easily be mapped to our model, as Margaret mentioned, and they create their unique constellations. On va prendre la prochaine diapo. Okay, now that you have played your song, your version of the song, what can you do next? You can jive it, you can jazz it, you can remix it. In other words, you can use a unified lifecycle model for a variety of purposes. For example, information and data practitioners can communicate between themselves using a common terminology, which minimizes the misunderstandings and the barriers between these two disciplines. Information and data stewards can understand their roles and responsibility throughout the life cycle of an asset. Information and data architects can develop models, capture retention disposition, workflows, create metadata scheme, establish data lineage, and so on. Business analysts define work processes and gather business requirements, which are passed on to IT, who can then plan, design, and configure systems accordingly. As for program and project managers and data scientists, they can use the model to plan their activities. Data producers can promote data quality and standardize reporting and storytelling. Finally, senior leaders can establish a joint information and data governance, determine what competencies and literacy levels are required, and even use it as a costing model. Prochaine diapo. I just need to drink a little bit. I hope we still have people. Is there a way to
Good.
show a thumb up with Zoom? If you can do it, please do it. Or otherwise, I'll take for granted that you're still with me. Okay, on the next few slides, I will show you concrete examples of the different usage I have just mentioned. This first example is about transforming your constellation, your path, your journey, into a checklist that can be shared with your business analyst and IT to communicate what steps your information assets or data assets have to go through, what are the loops to consider, and what are the path options if there's more than, from a node, if there's more than one options. This will inform the acquisition or the development of systems that manage and store information in your workplaces. Prochaine diapo. So don't be too afraid about this diapo, this slide. On this slide, through the family groupings of nodes that Margaret showed us earlier, we were able to leverage a GC data competency framework to obtain a mapping of competencies required to perform the work activities included involved in each of the nodes, the family of nodes, rather. And we go to next slide. The data competency framework is mapped to a data lifecycle activities, and which in turn, this mapping is mapped to data rows identified in the spider diagram on the right. If we add the mapping between the data competencies and our model from the previous slide, we can determine rows associated to each groupings, and from rows, we can create job descriptions. What I mean is on the next slide. Okay, so this is very fine work developed by our colleague Julian Kirby from the Department of Fisheries and Oceans, DFO. Julian is the mastermind behind the 3D rendering of the life cycle. And so starting from the GC competency framework, it was mapped to data lifecycle used at DFO, at his department. And there's a mapping between our model and the data lifecycle used at the DFO. From the data lifecycle at DFO, they were able to map to rows. Each step was associated to rows, and from rows, they were able to describe job descriptions. Job description support planning and data costing, which is directly linked to our model, life cycle model. And tadam, our model supports an entire ecosystem. The possibilities are not endless, but they're various and certainly interesting. Okay, next diapo. I'm too bilingual now. Next slide. Before we take your questions, I wish to reiterate that the paradigms of the paper and analog era do not function in the digital world. Conceiving a life cycle model that is common to both information and data, from a network perspective of nodes and relationships, that's a modern update of a core records management concept. We invite you to challenge us, to challenge a model, to find use cases we haven't thought of, or to join us to refine the model. Your input and your feedback are welcome. Back to you, Trevor.
Excellent. Thank you, NC. All right, so I'm going to not share. I'm going to refuse. I'm going to hit stop share. There we go. And so, fun fact: we're going to play the following game. So brace yourself, lovely live studio audience. Ta-da! And ta-da! Time to answer the question, which was, and how many hats does Trevor better have a Jays logo on it? Official hats, by the way. I don't just buy any fashion hat. These are hats that players have worn. For example, you might say to me, I don't remember hats the Jays players wearing this hat. I'm like, this is the official clubhouse hat. So if you're the player in a clubhouse, this is the official hat. Have they ever worn it? Not the right question. Don't ask me that question. So it's an official hat. So the answer is actually, and our winner is Alice. Alice said, as many as I want. And so that is in fact the answer. Because my partner Diane looks at me like I look at her when she buys shoes. What are you doing? But the answer actually technically is 19. 19 Jace hats. There you go. So 19. So, but how about we just get back on track? So 19. You'll all be sent. Rick will send you wealth, fame, fortune, and good tidings. That's all prize winners. Rick will have a personal handwritten congratulations note sent to you by mail. It should arrive any month from now. All right, so what we want to do is take some questions. I saw some in the chat. I just want to reiterate again some of what we've covered for you today. We've tried to bring two communities together. We have tried to not have a data policy group and an information policy group sit beside each other. We've tried to unite a methodological approach. We've attempted to make this more pragmatic such that, as MC showed at the very end, we can connect it to other products. When would I use this? To what extent would I use this? And so one of the primary ideas is an information architect. We in this room today might understand information architecture to causally mean file plan. We are going well beyond that. We need the model that goes to essentially IT-based GCERB boards, enterprise architectural review boards, so that we can attest that in fact the full compliance measure has been woven in to any system emerging that is going to house content. And that is because the future of IM has changed. I read to you filing cabinets. I read to you part about paper being shoved in filing cabinets in records offices. As you live through with email, as you're living through with data, it does not come to you. You must go to it. How? How do you go with it? With what? With the idea of both compliance, which people are like, sure, thanks, whatever. It's important though, and because your risk is reduction, we've always been about that. And the pragmatism that data has offered about connecting it to skills on application. So our next journey actually is, if the journey mapping constellation is the evidence to go to a GCARB board, to a Government of Canada Enterprise Architectural Review Board to sanction our element of the architecture, okay? What about the data? Well, the data part, as Mary Claude was saying, is in each node, there are actions, and we'll be specific, what standards to use, what actions are happening, right? Then we actually know how to apply this. So we are trying to bring it further down. Again, this is new real estate for us in our profession, but we are no longer just IM. I will keep stressing that. We are information data governance. We are part of the CPDI working group. We have new community members. We are growing, right? So just leave you with that food for thought. And at this point now, though, let us take some questions. So either Rick, I guess I can cherry pick someone, or have you
Yeah, no, go right ahead, Trevor. I just wanted to say to the those of us that are watching today on this presentation, I talk to people all over the country, and I know some of you may be saying, "Well, Government of Canada is pretty big." I mean, you have all this stuff going on, and we may not have all this stuff going on in our organization. We're a little smaller than that, but I will say that data people are popping up all over the country, all of a sudden, out of nowhere. They do not know about us as records and information management professionals at all. They go ahead and do whatever they are think they're tasked to do at that point, and they don't talk to us at all. So we're running at cross purposes a little bit in many situations in the country. And for those of you that had seen this for the first time today, this is my second time, and I loved it even more the second time than I did the first time. Thank you all so much for doing this. It's very important for us to at least recognize that data people are popping up, and how can we work with them to make the overall organization stronger and better in the information management community. I think that's the important task. So stay with it. I know it may look a little huge when you really start thinking about all this stuff. But it makes so much sense once you dive in and dig in a little bit deeper. It makes so much sense. So I really appreciate the work you've all done on this particular topic, and I
Thanks,
will
Rick.
be taking it back to the IGIM group when we start on version 3, deciding what version 3 ought to look like in ARM International. So I'm excited to do that.
Well, and I'll segue off that then, Rick. Thank you very much for sharing that. With to Donna's, can you anticipate? So I'll start from some of the comments and work up the chat, but can we anticipate more? This has never not been an ongoing dialogue. This has never not been an effort to have, Rick and company find ways to bring us together. So of course, we are absolutely going to try to get communications out on this. Yes, we keep talking our own cryptic language in the Art of Canada. This is a professional approach we feel strongly about. So to be more specific, one of the questions: how do the data folks within the GOC respond? Well, here's the idea. There was a conference that the Canada School of Public Service hosts, and they called it the Data Conference, and 8,000 people showed up. Not literally; it was all online. Um, that is just a fan club of people who love to use data to solve problems. Let's go back to baseball. There's a Society of American Baseball Researchers, SABR. They've really got into stats. It's mathematical formulas, right? We've seen this in our movies and baseball nomenclature. Stats is making its way in. That's what that was. But in that group was the data managers, the DAMAs, those people who clearly understood and had the same overarching premise around, you do know that the quality of your data sucks, right? And so they were trying to find a way of getting it cleaned, getting it ready and fit for use. Because frankly, a lot of data collections are done just like shared drives. They're just a nightmare. So we found like-minded folks because the community was big enough to find them, and they were looking to be found and work with us. And that's a numbers game, but it's this idea that the quote unquote data community has tonalities to it. So it was fantastic. A long story short, it was fantastic. Can we continue to unite? And I think this is where we got to keep going after the understanding that a chief data officer position has over what are they in charge of. And we have half of the chief data officers from an IMish type background who understand the premise that getting it fit for use and having it be quality is key. And in fact, the slogan in the Government of Canada has become for the IM group, the DM group, the IDG group to make things AI ready, right? Because the whole idea is you keep ingesting content into your language model, and is it right? Is it good, right? We understand language models get trained with what? With what? So we're attaching to that context. And so we are finding the like-minded people. So I guess that's how I would answer it. I answered in the chat Cameron's question about the pedanticness of information data. I mean, to summarize that question, what definitions did you use? We essentially use the existing definitions, but we recognize the politics that the term data, which has always historically found itself as an example of a type of information, or if I have data and I then make sense of it, thus I have information. Sure, but we went after the pragmatism. most people speak in the government that information kind of looks like this, right? That's what information looks like. And they kind of equate it to records, textual based thinking. And so we decided to play politics and recognize that data has emerged as its own entity, its own format. So I choose, Cameron, to answer your question from a format perspective, right? So there is the technicality of things, but then there's the, again, political practicality of it. And then what else? What else?
There was a couple in the QA section there too, if you're able to see that.
Ah, okay. Ooh.
Yeah, Margaret, or do you want to dive into that one?
Which one?
Well, just choose one. Just choose one. But...
Okay.
Ken says, I'll go with Ken, because Ken's 3 of these. So Ken goes, Trev, I love you. You're the best. Thanks, Ken. Thanks. Appreciate that.
That's how that would do.
Yeah.
Does the creation
contextualization.
of... Oh, okay. Which one?
Let's go from
Ken's
top
done
to bottom.
3.
How about, yeah,
Okay.
contextualization seems not to be simply to be the creation of metadata, but also discrete records, correct? Yes.
Correct.
Correct.
But we love metadata.
Yeah.
And this is the tonality. I think what we're really trying to drive IMers towards is creating a file plan in SharePoint is fine, not sufficient. And the mess, of course, the SharePoint is that says, oh, you can create metadata, aka columns. You're like, thanks for nothing. But it's to drive us out of our comfort zone. It's to drive us towards the power of metadata as we segue over from a fulsome information architectural map to really speaking a data architectural map.
Yeah.
Number two. Well, sorry, MC, Margaret, jump in. Just cut me off. But if I miss something, the package that enters the process, yes, the cow, the snake, the stick, the whatever, looks like it can be as small as a single record or a conglomeration of data. Does this break the? We hope it doesn't, but when MC challenges you, that's kind of what we're wondering. How big and small of an item can it go? Can pass through this? We were asked in Montreal, could a data item be lifecycle managed? And we're hoping kind of in a micro way. And we were thinking, why not? If you have the ability to manage it, as in back to my data architectural concept of, if this is the journey and it says contextualize, where does that literally show up? So if you have literally the ability to manage it, my suspicion is that yes, anything can be managed, but that's where we're coming, sessions like this and ideas like this are actually tried out. We've got the words, we'll show you the words. We've got the spreadsheet, try it out. Please let us know. Well, we think so, Ken.
Yeah. I would say the challenge as you get bigger to conglomerations of data and information, you've got things going in so many different directions. You may actually find that you have to take a step back and go, okay, I'm going to, for this part of the process, I'm going to do one diagram, another part of the process, another diagram, another part of the process, a third diagram. Just pragmatically, so that you don't end up being very, very confused and not knowing where you're going.
One of the intention on that, though, is to leverage. So to that end, based on how Margaret's expressed it, and Ken, your word was multiple systems. I do have a suspicion that you would really try to attach the journey to a system at most, right? I think I see the macro, but again, part of it is connecting constellations. Like I know our maps of the universe show Orion and different things, but everything is connected ultimately. But yeah, Margaret.
Mm-hmm. And that sort of goes to one of the other questions that was in the chat. How does it apply across systems and sort of things? I think it would be interesting to explore the use of this to kind of identify, oh, this is where it goes from being an automated process to a manual process. You have to move data from one system to another, and then maybe potentially show opportunities for improving automation, integration of systems, and then that could be, ideally connected to that planning and bigger picture uses of this life cycle that Mary Claude mentioned at the end of the presentation. So again, we're still working out some of the uses of this. So, but I would think that it could be used across systems to maybe highlight where there are gaps or needs for integration, or inefficiencies.
Yeah, so that segues, Ken, your third question, which is the data process map requiring a full process. Well, I don't think it requires it, because what I've seen with a colleague who sits beside me who's a data architect, and this comes back to the statement of data for data's sake. Like, he works on HR data, and that's a mess of data, but he's also isolating certain aspects within it. So this comes back down to, well, what is it you're trying to map and to what extent? So I don't think it requires it. It would benefit it from it. I don't want data process mapping done for just the sake of it, but he's ultimately trying to figure out where the breakdown is. And more importantly, if you choose to then decide business process mapping, and let's redefine that as what Margaret just said, automation. If we're trying to go towards that route, right? AI agents, then
Trevor,
how do
I
these
don't
data
wanna
maps work?
slow you down too much, but it is noon, or we've crossed our hour boundary here. So for those of you that have to go to your next meeting, by all means do that. Thank you for showing up, and keep supporting the IM Canada Connect group across the country. We'll bring some great sessions to you over the next year as well, and thank you for your attendance. And thanks to Troy for kind of looking after the overall webinar here, and Donna for helping on the program side, and of course Trevor and Margaret and Marie-Claude for your presentation today. It was wonderful, and thanks for spending the time to do that. Do the three of you have time to stay for a little while if there's more questions that we want to answer? Troy, are you okay to do that?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, and thank you, Rick. Thank you, Troy.
Yeah, thank you.
Actually, the one thing, one of the earlier questions there too about the session recording, if that's all right with you guys, we can get this posted, and if you want to provide any material, I can post alongside the recording as well.
I'll email you the presentation.
Sounds good.
Thanks, Trevor.
All right. Well, do we have anyone left online? We have 30, 29, 28.
Ken's looking to, he's got his hand raised at this point.
So Trevor,
good.
was there feedback from the ARMA Canada conference? Like, you guys did this live and the room was packed. So what came out of attending ARMA Canada and providing this session there?
Number one, that we're on the right track. I think people in the room saw opportunity. I think they bought into our sales pitch that there's opportunity here. Two, nothing practical. No one's tested it. I mean, that's still part of our sales pitch. Come and use the words, see if they work for you. But momentum and buzz. I mean, what is the session being held in Phoenix that used to be MER? What's that one? Info something now that ARMA runs? Run by a Mike InfoCon, is it? There's a Mike gentleman who helps steward that conversation.
You mean the one that's coming up in Phoenix, Trevor?
Yeah.
InfoCon 2025.
Okay, yeah. So we were introduced to him, and I think, to be fair, he had a Rick Sterling type of reaction. He fell out of his chair and we're like, "We need you to come." And I'm like, that opened up the whole Pandora's box that Canada versus, like, I'm going to the States, to which the answer is esoterically no.
I hear you.
But momentum. So to answer your question, momentum is what came out of Montreal, and just invigoration. I personally have been on the stage, as you all know, many times, and I felt what the reaction, or I had not seen the reaction, to be really frank, I had not seen the reaction in the room be like that. That was amazing, which is why I joke, but I really am not joking about the epiphany and the moment that Marie-Claude had, and her asking us to join her band. She does own the copyright, so if we run into a disagreement and we split, kind of like Pink Floyd, she still owns the name. So yeah.
Ken.
Yeah, Ken.
So one of the things that I noticed, and this is completely off the books, going off the rails, is looking at some of the diagrams and some of the graphs. It looks like quantum computing or quantum mechanics, because you've got this kind of superposition process. Maybe I should take this offline. It was really interesting to see how, like, a data package could be in multiple places at the same time, but still progressing along a path. to arrive at a position in the future.
Gardner
Sorry.
uses the,
Again,
yeah, no,
yeah.
I just want to say
No, go
very
ahead,
quickly,
Trevor.
Gardner uses a term, a global, provincial, local. I think there's three terms like this, but what they're really saying is in the data sphere. They shared this concept over in their Gardner data conference, and the idea was ultimately, yeah, there it is, simultaneously in three spots. And that's because a button called download exists. And so what are you trying to do? And what we're establishing here with this argument to the data community is, which of these three do you have? With the answer being you should have all three, or at least global, because there's a macro way to going about things. Then again, back to my scalability, maybe there's I'll come back to this middle term, which I forget, provincial, right? Which is 1, 3, 5, kind of that logic. So yeah, this is the idea of trying to bring centrality as well, which IM has been about in its essence, right? This overarching thing, because I know in the government of Canada, we got to get it to LEC, right? So there's this centrality. Who's doing that if it's so localized? But MC, you're going to jump in.
Yes, I wanted to thank you, Ken, for your comment. I don't know anything about quantum computing, but when I referred to the paper and analog paradigms that don't work in digital, digital doesn't have the same constraints as paper had. So two people can edit a document at the same time. It can be edited and consulted by another person. If we look at documents, but there are similar examples for data. So that's the beauty of it. It reflects all the possibilities of digital. What can be done simultaneously at the same time to a data or information asset.
Wonderful.
Yeah, I haven't seen any other questions.
No, I think that's good.
Thank you again for coming today, and please stay tuned for a future. We're gonna do more data presentations this year in IM Canada Connect as well. There's been a few that I think will be very useful for people to get comfortable with that data term, the terminology going forward, because I think we absolutely have to be comfortable with it. And I'm only going to say that this is probably crazy, it's make you all crazy, but I know that when we get privacy legislation, eventually, when Pepita's not walking on its walker, we have a new version of privacy legislation that we're going to have to deal with right to be forgotten at some point. And without the data stuff wired in, I think it's going to be impossible to figure that out. That's just my sense that with all the spaghetti data code we have everywhere in North America right now, to forget anybody is going to be absolutely impossible unless we do a little more work here. Thank you
Okay.
again.
Thanks,
for the
everybody.
opportunity.
Look forward to seeing you all when I
See you,
next
Donna.
see you live.
Yeah.
Yep. See you
Thank
soon.
you very
Appreciate it
much.
again. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks,
Bye.
everybody.
Bye now.
Bye for now.